Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. MacIntyre thinks that our culture is become very emotivist. And I think you can see a lot of signs of this. The way moral disagreement tends to break down is one way. What he's going to identify as characters in our society is another way. And one of the things that he says about emotivism, from a social perspective, is that it destroys the distinction between manipulative and non-manipulative types of social relations, or ways of interacting with other people. So it turns everybody not necessarily into a manipulator all the time, but somebody who can't see any real difference between not manipulating people, treating them as if they have something like inherent dignity or worth, and manipulating people, seeing them as just means to an end, a tool, something like that. Sometimes even seeing themselves that way. So if emotivism gets into a culture, and MacIntyre thinks that it has with ours, that's one of the things that happens. What he's calling characters are certain social roles. And so let's talk for a minute just about social roles. We have all sorts of different social roles. And what do we mean by that? I'm occupying one social role right now just in talking to you up here in front of the stage. You know, is about some stuff that I put in iLearn for you, that I went to school and got a PhD in. Well, I didn't get a PhD in MacIntyre, but you get the idea, right? You guys are occupying a social role by your behavior here right now. Is this the only social role that you have, the only social role that I have? I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son. Those are familial roles, but those are also social roles, right? If I don't send my kids anything on their birthday, am I a good dad or bad dad? Some people are only whispering it. Go ahead and say it. Bad dad, right. Wait, what are you talking about here? Not sending the kids anything on their birthday? Yeah, that'd be bad. I mean, there's other things that go into being a good dad besides that. But there's a social role, and we can say people are fulfilling their social roles well or not. And do you have a lot of social roles? And if you have a job, there's a social role, right? If you're a waiter, I don't know what jobs you guys have. Let's say you're a waiter, you're coming to the table, there's certain expectations of you, there's certain expectations you have of the other people. These govern our interactions. They make things intelligible, MacIntyre says. And you don't actually have to buy into your social role necessarily. You could be just like putting it on, or being kind of, you could have doubts about it. He uses the example, for example, of a Catholic priest or a union leader who, they say the things that they're supposed to say, but they don't really believe it. You know, the Catholic priest has lost his faith, or the union leader really hates working people and would like to sell them out if he could, but he doesn't. So there's certain social roles where our personality could be different than the role that we have. You know, I don't feel like being a professor all the time. It's not a bad role to have, but you know, it's not the only thing I want to do, right? There are certain social roles, MacIntyre says, that tie personality, or there's certain social roles where personality is tied in with it. Where if you're having this kind of social role, there's really a lot of pressure to conform yourself to it, to have a certain kind of moral expectation, to value things in a certain way. And he talks about three. Maybe there could be more in modern culture. that fit into this Emotivist thing. He talks about another one in another place. And he calls these the Aesthete, the Manager, and the Therapist. Now, that doesn't mean that every time that you get involved with management, you're necessarily the manager. And that doesn't mean that if you go and see a therapist, they're a bad person, they're an emotivist. Right? That's not necessarily so, right? But there is something about these particular roles in modernity, MacIntyre thinks, that tie in with emotivism. But let's talk about this for a second, though, aesthete. You ever called anybody an aesthete? Oh, you're such an aesthete. You almost have to be one to use that term. What do you think this means? Yeah.
Is that the consumer one?
Yeah, I put that it's essentially being like a consumer.
Something like rich, right?
Yeah, he is the rich aesthete, but you don't actually have to be rich in our society to fit the bill for that. It helps to be rich, because that takes your mind off of a lot of things. What does it mean to be an aesthete? Yeah.
Kind of like materialistic almost,
Well,
like face value.
not necessarily. I mean, there are certain ways in which you could do it where you might be very materialistic. What other word can you think of that has some sort of connection with that?
Aesthetic?
Aesthetics, yeah.
Now,
What is aesthetics? Yeah.
Beauty.
Has to do with beauty. It is a philosophical discipline. It's like, concerned with what is beauty, what is art, what is the sublime. Now, think about the kind of valuation that goes into assessing something as beautiful. Or let's use some other aesthetic categories that we actually use in our own time. Something is cool. That's an aesthetic category. Something is stupid. When you contrast cool and stupid, you're not actually saying something lacks intelligence. If you call an album stupid, you're not actually saying that the album is stupid, right? You're saying it's aesthetically unpleasing in some way, aren't you? It lacks certain aesthetic characteristics. And what are the sort of things that you might say this about? Works of art, right? How many of you go to the museum, look at works of art every single week? Or get your art books open and, Matisse, wow, it's wonderful. Is that your aesthetic experience that you're making judgments about most of the time? Yeah.
Like sceneries, like a nice view.
Okay, that's an important one. Maris is nice because it's got quite a few. I remember the last place that I worked, I didn't realize how ugly it was until I had a friend come, and I wanted to give this friend a tour, and I thought, where would be a nice place on campus to take them? And I realized there wasn't any. Not a single nice view. Yeah. So it was aesthetically unpleasing.
Like advertisement posters, or like just
Yes. Yes. All those glossy magazines that are filled with ads. People actually put those ads together, and they got paid a good amount of money to put those ads together in aesthetically pleasing ways. And therefore, products that may or may not be aesthetically pleasing. Hopefully, when you put the product on, if it's, say, clothes or something like that, it actually looks good. If it's cologne or perfume, hopefully it actually smells good. It smells different in the magazine than it's going to smell on your body, right? All of you know that. What else do we get all aesthetic about? If we want to, use that sort of term. Bless you. Attractiveness of people. Yeah. What about food? Food is very much about aesthetics. Now, can you look at the whole world in terms of just everything being an aesthetic phenomenon, everything being there just for enjoyment, for consumption, for maybe talking about, or tweeting about, or Facebooking about? Now we have Pinterest, right? Pinterest is an aesthetic social media by its very nature. Are there people who live their whole lives and sort of submerge moral judgment into just aesthetic judgment? That would be the rich aesthete. They worry more about whether something is cool than whether it's good. As a matter of fact, they don't even worry about whether it's good or bad. Those are not categories after a while that make sense to them. And if emotivism is right, why wouldn't that make sense? If good and bad is just how we feel about stuff, how is that any different than I like cake, you like pie, I like, shrimp scampi, and you like some other shrimp dish, it's all, I like this music, you like that music. That is a type that, as MacIntyre says, fits into this emotivist ethos. Let's look at the other two, though. They're even more interesting. The manager. What's going on in bureaucratic organizations, in groups, where you have to allocate resources? Doesn't every company have a mission statement? Marist actually has a mission statement. How many of you looked at the mission statement? Good portion of you. Is it particularly meaningful? It is? That's an unusual mission statement then, isn't it?
Tells you, it's like in sentence, says
Yeah.
it outlines what it expects of the students,
Yeah.
being open-minded, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, these are values that are supposed to be inculcated in you. Come in, if you're closed-minded, we're going to fix that by the end, right? A lot of mission statements nobody pays much attention to, though. Why? Isn't it pretty important? That's the whole goal that we're after, yeah.
For the most part, companies have sort of the same mission statement, I guess.
Yeah, to deliver a quality product to the consumer at, a good price. That could apply to so many different ones. And those are values, right? But those are primarily values of efficiency. There are companies who say they want to change the world, fix things. But you could be involved in one of those organizations and not care about that at all. You could be so concerned with, okay, what are my goals? How am I going to accomplish them? What are my resources? How am I going to, as MacIntyre says, how am I going to connect means to these ends? And then you never think about the ends. It's interesting. And I'm not actually knocking war or fighting or things like that myself right now. But there are a lot of people who worked at companies till we outsourced a lot of this stuff that produced munitions or bombers or missiles or things like that. And it didn't matter to them at all that what they were producing were instruments of death. And they might have actually been, people who personally, they felt that war is a bad thing. Or, American wars are bad, or, the current regime's war, or whatever. But they don't focus on that, because what their job is to do is to make everything run properly. And so questions of right and wrong can't really be dealt with, because those are a matter of individual values. Those are subjective. So we have to push those out of the process. What can you focus on? Efficiency. Doing the most with the resources that you have. That becomes the primary goal. And that's the only part where they're being rational against it. Everything else is just emotivist. For the therapist, MacIntyre says what the manager does in the life of organizations, the therapist does with respect to health and personal well-adjustment, those sorts of things, getting us over. He uses an old category that we don't use in psychology anymore, are neuroses. Now we talk in terms of disorders, since DSM-4 or 3. There's some ed psych people in here, right? Did you know that? 4, we changed to disorders, I think, from neurosis. Sounds about right. We'll just say, yeah. The therapist, like MacIntyre says, is not primarily concerned with truth. They're concerned with making people feel better, happier, fit in better with other people. That's the primary goal. And you can do that while thinking that value judgments are all just purely subjective, just, expressions of our emotions or preferences. That would actually make you a pretty good therapist, wouldn't it? You wouldn't be bothered by all these sort of worries about whether you're actually steering people in the wrong way. So long as you can figure out how to get rid of their disorders and make them fit in better according to certain, expert criteria that you can find in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, right? That's a mouthful. You're doing the right thing. So with the manager and the therapist, worries about ultimate ends and whether they're actually good ends or not, get rid of those. Just focus on the process. With the rich aesthete, you don't even have that. You just have, I'm just going to focus on whatever makes me feel good. These are all types of emotivist characters. These are ways in which people, you might say, structure their lives and their activities. And these define the ways in which we interact with each other in our culture quite a bit. Like we said with the drug addict. If you're a drug addict and you get into a treatment program and you want to get better, they don't care why you want to get better. They're just interested in getting you better by certain criteria. They don't care whether that affects all these other things, do they? So long as they can produce you eventually as somebody who's cured, that's fine. And notice too that the same things could be tied in with, say, the same organization. Some people adopt social causes almost like rich aesthetes. They just want to get involved with something that makes them feel kind of good and like they're contributing something and making a difference. But they never actually worry about whether it's really good or bad, the cause that they're tied in with. They just want to have something to be tied in with. That would be this. At the same time, who makes the cause actually work? You could have some manager who is not interested in that cause whatsoever. They're just interested in making those dollars that are contributed actually funnel to the right things, and whatever it is that they're trying to distribute, make it happen. This is where we're going to leave off.